Hello, I'm Paula Diane Cunningham, State Director for AARP Michigan. And on behalf of AARP Michigan's 1.3 million members, I want to welcome you to this virtual Lunch and Learn, and thank you for taking some time to view this Lunch and Learn with us today. As you may know, AARP is Michigan's largest, and actually the nation's largest, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that actually fights and works on behalf of those who are 50 and older so they can choose, and that's a very key word for us, choose how they age. We should all have choices and all have opportunities to choose how we want to age. And so in our advocacy fight for the issues that are most important to those who are 50 and older, we fight for issues such as family health care, the high cost of prescription drugs, age-friendly communities, retirement planning, financial security. Those are some of the issues that are most important to older adults and their families. But for this particular program, for this virtual program, we had to find new ways to connect with each other because we can't be in the Capitol as much as we like to right now, but that's going to change. We'll see you face to face real soon. But for this particular virtual Lunch and Learn, we want to share with you some specific recommendations about how policymakers could use Michigan's one-time funds under the American Rescue Plan Act to actually make some systemic, long-term, transformational changes to our long-term care system now and also into the future. We've all been just heart-stricken by the loss of so many lives in nursing homes as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and nursing homes are doing everything that they possibly could to try to keep up with this pandemic. But there was not only the loss of life, there was also the isolation that left countless numbers of people really feeling disconnected from loved ones. And so I don't think there's any debate that we all need to look at a long-term systemic change to what we can do to make certain that people age the way that they want to age and they age with choices. Changes are needed, and so we're going to talk about some of the opportunities that are currently available. And the opportunities are not just a flavor of the month, but they're long-term, systemic, sustainable changes that we just need an infusion of one-time funds to get them, to jumpstart them, and then they're sustainable and additional funds should not be needed. But first, I want to introduce to you the members of our team, our advocacy team, Melissa Seifert, and I'm sure many of you know Mel. We call her Mel, lovingly call her Mel. She is our Associate State Director for Advocacy, and she stomps the halls of the Capitol all the time and advocates on behalf of AARP's legislative agenda. And also Jason Lakowski, who will describe how we work with our volunteers throughout the entire state of Michigan and our members throughout the state of Michigan, and make sure we listen to their voices as we create our advocacy and policy agenda. And then, of course, Lisa Denton Cooper, who is the manager of advocacy, and she's going to share with you some specific recommendations for how these one-time ARPA funds can be used. And again, the recommendations that she's sharing with you are not something that's just going to help this generation, but I guarantee you they will help generations to come to improve the quality of life as they age. Thank you for listening, and please don't touch that keyboard just yet. We've only got a little bit more information to share with you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Seifert, but everyone calls me Mel. I'm AARP Michigan's Associate State Director for Government Affairs. I know how busy your schedules are, so I appreciate you taking the time to have lunch with us today in this virtual way. As Paula mentioned, AARP advocates on public policy matters on behalf of people age 50 and over, and our staff and volunteer advocacy team works on both state and federal issues. Each year, we publish our annual AARP Michigan State Legislative Agenda that we sent to you this spring. You can find a copy of it online too at the website showing here on the screen. We also communicate with legislators and staff about our positions on legislation all through the year. And I invite you to contact us by phone, email, or text, or we're happy to meet with you in person. Priority issues we're currently working on, in addition to the issues we'll talk about more in just a moment, include lowering prescription drug prices, bridging the digital divide for older adults when it comes to access to broadband, providing support for family caregivers, honoring and supporting our military veterans and their families, increasing public awareness about brain health and resources for families facing dementia, and helping more communities become age-friendly places. We're always happy to talk with you about any of these issues or any other issues that impact older adults in our state. In addition to the legislative and policy resources that our state team brings, we also have access to nationally recognized policy experts and timely economic research, including from AARP's Public Policy Institute. We are committed to good public policy and the art of the possible, and we're always happy to partner with you to identify and pursue policy solutions that make sense for Michiganders. We appreciate all you do on behalf of this great state and the people of Michigan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jason Lachowski, Program Specialist for Advocacy at AARP Michigan. My role with AARP includes working with our AARP advocacy volunteers, responding to AARP member concerns, and sending out email blasts on behalf of our advocacy team. In our state advocacy efforts, we rely on nearly 300 AARP Michigan volunteers who live in districts across the state, including a core team of 50 AARP advocacy volunteers. We also have an email database of approximately 220,000 AARP member households across Michigan that we contact on a regular basis to share action alerts and information about legislation we're working on. Like Melissa said, please feel free to reach out to me or the others on our team anytime. And next, I'm going to turn things over to Lisa Cooper, who is going to lead us in today's deep dive in the world of long-term care and AARP's recommendations of how Michigan can make some long-needed reforms.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for this program. I'm Lisa Denton Cooper, Manager of Advocacy for the AARP Michigan State Office. And I'm really excited to be with you today to talk about the turning point we're currently at in Michigan and the tremendous opportunity right now to improve the experience of aging in our state, both now and for the future. The invitation that we emailed you for today's program contained a link to the paper that I'm going to reference today. And it's called Home at Last, the Historic Opportunity to Transform Michigan's Long-Term Care System Using One-Time Funds in 2021. There's also a link to the paper here on the screen. Here's the gist of our recommendations. As Paula mentioned, what the citizens of our state experienced in nursing homes due to the COVID pandemic needs to be a wake-up call for all of us. Yet even before the coronavirus pandemic, long-standing problems in traditional nursing homes, such as infection control violations, low staffing ratios, and safety concerns, have led individuals and their families to seek alternative options that there just aren't enough of in Michigan. 89% of Michigan voters want to avoid ever living in a nursing home. If or when they need long-term care services, voters consistently throughout the years have told us they would prefer to stay at home or in a home-like community setting. That includes me, and I'm guessing that's what you'd prefer for yourself and your family members. Recognizing this reality is not a criticism of the committed and hardworking staff in Michigan's nursing homes. The problem is with the current model of dense congregate care and institutional processes that expose residents not only to significant risk during a pandemic, but also to lower overall quality of life day to day. Tried and true alternatives to traditional institutional settings exist that allow people to age in place by receiving long-term services and supports in home and community-based settings. However, access to such services is currently limited in Michigan due to funding constraints and a lack of home and community-based service providers in underserved areas. This is where AARP's recommendations come in, and the potential the state has at this juncture to create some lasting transformative change if we choose to use some of the one-time federal funding currently available to the state of Michigan. In particular, we're talking about using a portion of the estimated $139 million in one-time federal funding that's available to Michigan under Section 9817 of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or AARPA. This is the part of AARPA funding that's based on a temporary 10% increase in the federal medical assistance percentage, or FMAP. And it was specifically earmarked in the federal legislation to expand or strengthen or enhance home and community-based services under the Medicaid program. And for some of our recommendations, we're talking about using a very small portion of the billions of dollars that are available to Michigan under AARPA in a different pot. The AARPA funds known as Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. When you look at AARP's recommendations and the current needs in our state, part of what we are talking about is rebalancing. As you know, AARP has advocated rebalancing Michigan's long-term care system for years because the current system is out of sync with what people overwhelmingly prefer for themselves and their families. Michigan's long-term care system continues to be locked in a broken cycle in which we continue to spend too much taxpayer money for care in settings that are both more expensive than alternatives and not what Michigan residents want for themselves and their families. We at AARP recognize and appreciate that over the past decade, the legislature has managed to make progress toward rebalancing through the annual state appropriations process. The fiscal year 2022 budget that you just passed is a great example of progress, particularly with the new funding you're providing for 1,000 additional slots for My Choice in the coming year. However, that addresses only part of the looming issues faced by our long-term care system that are due, at least in part, to some key structural barriers in the current system. The pandemic has shone a light on the pressing need for additional reforms beyond rebalancing to improve how services are delivered across the continuum of care, including in nursing homes. And that's why AARP's recommendations for using these one-time funding sources propose transformative changes, not only in terms of increasing access to home and community-based services, but also improving the quality and safety of care provided by nursing homes for those individuals who remain in that setting. We know there are actually a lot of potential proposals that other organizations are sharing that would increase access to HCBS and address needs in the system for the short run. And AARP supports some of those proposals too. But the specific recommendations we're making are ones with the potential to improve the system for the long run without requiring increased state spending after this pot of one-time funds is exhausted. We don't want to set up a situation in which the state expands service for just a year or two and then has to make cuts when the temporary money runs out. And we are happy to talk with you in person about any or all of the proposals described in our AARP white paper and the cost estimates that we've also shared with you. But with the time left for today's program, I want to highlight two of our recommendations in particular. First, the proposal to create an LTSS pre-development loan fund, and related, an LTSS subordinated loan fund. The acronym LTSS stands for Long-Term Services and Supports. And second, I'll highlight how our state could incentivize more small house nursing homes in Michigan, which are also called greenhouses. Once in place, ongoing costs for home and community-based services are significantly lower than costs for care in residential settings. Medicaid dollars can support nearly 3 older adults or people with disabilities in home and community-based services for every 1 person in a nursing home. Statistical modeling has shown that increasing the portion of Medicaid LTSS dollars toward home and community-based services by 2 percentage points annually can reduce overall Medicaid LTSS spending by 15% over 10 years. And once in place, the greenhouse model of care has similar operating costs to traditional nursing homes, or in some cases, lower costs because they typically face much less staff turnover than traditional nursing homes. However, access to the affordable capital needed for startup costs continues to be a significant barrier, especially for settings intended to serve low or moderate income persons. So in developing our recommendations, AARP has been working with a national consultant with specific expertise in developing and implementing financing mechanisms for LTSS systems. The types of financing systems we could actually make happen in Michigan, thanks to these one-time federal funds. Here's the rationale behind the proposal to create a long-term services and supports pre-development loan fund and an LTSS subordinated loan fund for owner equity and working capital. Many smaller businesses and nonprofits, especially in underserved areas, lack the funds or investors required to finance business exploration and planning costs. An LTSS pre-development loan fund could make use of one-time funds to provide no-cost or low-cost loans for providers of the types of long-term services and supports the state wants to incentivize. Then as loans are paid back, the fund could continue as a revolving loan fund. And the idea of a subordinated loan fund is similar. Conventional commercial lending structures generally require that 25 to 40% of a project's or business's financial needs be met through owner-contributed risk capital. But for many financially viable LTSS businesses and long-term care programs, the required equity is difficult or impossible to raise due to the lack of competitive investment returns for businesses serving majority Medicaid populations. A subordinated loan, which means it is only paid after the primary loan payments are satisfied, can act as an equity stand-in with lower interest costs, alternative underwriting standards, and a first loss reserve to cover the higher risk associated with equity-like investments. The impact of setting up an LTSS subordinated loan fund would be to help new home and community-based service businesses develop, and that would provide capacity for increased access to home and community-based services in Michigan for years to come. Types of programs that could be incentivized this way would be homes for the aged, adult day programs, PACE programs, and depending on how they're licensed, small house nursing homes or greenhouses. AARP believes that greenhouses are a model that we need more of in Michigan rather than traditional nursing homes. Greenhouses are small, with only about 10 to 12 residents per house. They feature private rooms and private bathrooms, and what's known as a universal caregiver staffing system, a dedicated team of caregivers who are responsible for the whole range of personal, clinical, and home care activities the residents need. The greenhouse model has been around a long time, and it's been studied quite a lot. Greenhouses have been found to offer much higher quality of life for residents and higher family satisfaction. And direct care staff also experience higher satisfaction working in greenhouse homes, so there's less staff turnover. Greenhouses are overall much healthier, happier places for people to live. And research now also shows that residents of greenhouses across the country fared significantly better than residents of traditional nursing homes during the coronavirus pandemic, with residents of greenhouses facing significantly fewer cases of COVID-19 and fewer deaths from COVID-19. I'm going to turn things back over to Melissa to close out our program today and to let you know how to contact us so we can continue this discussion. But let me summarize our proposals this way. We know that Michigan's long-term care system is in urgent need of reform, as the COVID-19 pandemic tragically demonstrated. The proposals that AARP is recommending for using one-time federal funds would help bring about critical changes to our system that are both sorely needed now and that will pay off in the future.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the virtual Lunch and Learn. This is a first of many, I hope. So if you enjoy the program, please let us know. Thank you also for taking time out of your very busy schedule to learn more about AARP's ARPA funding requests. Again, if you have any questions regarding what you learned about at the program today, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, Melissa Seifert, And then again, I want to thank you one more time. We know how busy you all are, especially during this time of year. So thank you. And we look forward to working with you very soon in this very near future on other efforts that AARP is working on. So thank you one more time. And I hope that you all have an enjoyable rest of your day.